Okay, welcome again. And I was telling you that the nucleus, which is in a magnetic field, it is oriented with respect to the magnetic field. It is spinning in that magnetic field. Okay, and then when it absorbs a radio frequency wavelength, which is matching with the frequency of the spin, then it will absorb energy, and because of absorption of the energy, it will flip over to the other state. Okay, that is in the other spin motion. Okay, and the actual frequency with which that particular proton will absorb energy or radio frequency will depend upon what is the chemical structure of the molecule, or what is the local environment or local chemical or electronic environment of that particular proton. And this particular thing is referred to as the shielding effect. Okay, shielding effect. So normally if it was an isolated proton on its own, then it would probably require a lesser energy for undergoing the spin transition. But if that proton is in a chemical molecule, okay, if it is in a chemical molecule, or if it is a complex molecule, then it will probably require more energy for the transition to happen. Okay, and why it will require more energy? Because it is shielded by many different atoms which are present in that sample molecule. Okay, so this particular phenomenon is called as the shielding effect. Okay, and the difference in the frequency of the nuclei, that difference is called as the chemical shift. So just imagine that if it is an isolated single proton, then it will require less energy for the spin transition. But if the proton is actually in a chemical compound, okay, or a big molecule, then because of the other atoms which are present in that molecule, that is because there is a particular chemical environment now in which that particular proton is present, then it will require a higher energy for the spin transition to take place. Okay, and this is called as the chemical shift. Okay, this particular phenomenon is called as the chemical shift. That is, there is a difference in the frequency of radiation which is absorbed by a proton if it was alone alone by itself, and if it is present in a particular sample molecule. Okay, and then the same thing happens if this particular proton is in a different sample molecule. Then again there will be a chemical shift, because that chemical environment is different. And that means that essentially there are so many different compounds which contain hydrogen. Okay, so all these compounds will show a difference in the frequency of radiation which is absorbed. Okay, radio frequency radiation that is absorbed, and that will be because of the chemical shift which is taking place in each of the different compounds. Okay, any question to anybody?
No, sir.
Okay, now another important thing is that whatever is that difference in the energy level which is absorbed, that difference actually is a very, very small difference. Okay, now just try to imagine this, that because that energy involved is a very, very small amount of energy, small magnitude of energy difference rather, I would say. Okay, therefore we need very strong magnets. Okay, I think in the very first slide I have shown you here, okay, the image of NMR instrument which is in this entire room. Okay, and this particular part actually is the magnetic coils which are present here. Okay? You can see that it is a huge thing actually. Okay, and that is because the magnets which are required here are very, very strong magnets. Okay, why strong magnets are required? Because the energy involved in the transition is very, very small or weak energy, and in order to increase the magnitude of the energy, because we should be able to detect the energy. Okay, our detectors also should be very sensitive, isn't it? But even if the detectors are sensitive, the energy involved is very small, and therefore to increase that intensity of the energy, we need to use a very, very strong magnetic field. Okay, so when we use a strong magnetic field, what will happen? The precision of the nuclei will be very, very fast. Okay, and therefore in order to convert the spin of the nucleus into the opposite spin, okay, a large amount of energy will be required. Okay, so whatever is that frequency of the radiation, the intensity of that radiation is more, okay, more intense radiation is required. Okay, and when the more intense radiation is required to carry out the flipping transition of the spin of the particular nuclei, okay, more amount of radiation will be absorbed, and that will be easily detected by the detector. Is it clear? Clear to everybody? Yes, or no?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so I have written here the statement: for a higher magnetic field strength, the precisional frequency rises to a higher radio the precisional frequency rises, and therefore a higher radio frequency is required to flip the nuclei. And when a higher frequency is required, it means that the signal will be very strong. The detector will be able to detect the signal, and therefore we will be able to carry out the analysis properly, okay, conveniently and accurately. Okay, then another thing which you should know is when we compare this with the infrared spectroscopy, then in the infrared spectroscopy, we have seen that there are vibrational transitions which are happening. And for the vibrational transition, certain amount of energy is required to be absorbed by the sample, and that energy falls in the infrared spectrum. Okay, so the wavelength of infrared spectrum is lesser than the wavelength of radio waves, and therefore the energy associated with infrared radiation was more compared to nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy. Okay, so just remember this very well, because if you are able to compare the different techniques, then your understanding will be more better and you will not forget the things easily. Okay, so now normally there are two modes of analysis. In one particular mode, what we do is we fix the particular sample in a certain magnetic field, okay, in a strong magnetic field, and then we vary the radio frequency range. Okay, so we give different kinds of incident radiation, or we allow different types of incident radiation in the radio frequency to fall on the sample, and then whichever wavelength is absorbed by the sample, that wavelength is considered, and that will give you information about what type of protons are present. That is to say, what is the chemical environment of the protons and what is the quantity of those protons, how many protons are there. Okay, that information will be obtained. And in another mode, what we can do is we can fix the radio frequency. Okay, so radio frequency is fixed and the magnetic field is scanned actually. Okay, so starting from a low magnetic field, we go to higher magnetic field, and then at whichever point there is absorption of the radio frequency radiation, that particular place, okay, that particular point will tell us about the magnetic field which was involved, and at that particular magnetic field, what was the wavelength which was absorbed by the sample. Okay, so both types of approaches are used, and when we are scanning the radio frequency range, it is called as the radio frequency sweep. Okay, and if it is the magnetic field which we are varying, then it is called as the magnetic sweep. Okay, sweep stands for what? What is sweep? SWEEP, sweep. That is jhadu lagana bolte hai na. Okay, so we are scanning, actually we are scanning that particular range of either the radio frequency wavelengths, or we are scanning the magnetic field. Okay, both approaches are used. Have you understood what I'm saying? The two approaches that are used, have you understood that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for just as an example, I'll tell you that if you want to get something, okay, in the lockdown time, isn't it? If you want to get some vegetables from the market, either you will go to the market, okay, or the market will come to your house. Okay, somebody will come to your house to give you the vegetables. Have you followed it? So either we use the magnetic,
Yes.
different magnetic fields, that is we vary the magnetic fields, or we can vary the radio frequency range to find out what radiation is absorbed. Okay, and then it will tell you about the that particular atom which is in question. Okay, so that is what I have written here. The modern instruments maintain a constant radio frequency, and small changes are induced in the magnetic field until the resonance is attained, right? And the point of resonance is dependent upon the electronic environment or the chemical environment of the nucleus. And that is how the NMR spectroscopy helps us to elucidate or determine the structure of biochemical molecules. Okay, of course, I have not yet completed my topic, so things will not be so clear so soon. We have to see some other things also, and then slowly you will be able to understand the complete, you can say, concepts involved in this particular type of analysis. Okay, but before that, we will also find out how we are analyzing these isotopes. I have said that these are isotopic atoms, okay, isotopes that we are determining. And then naturally you will have a question that where these isotopes are present. And then the interesting thing is that these isotopes I was telling you about, that is 1 hydrogen or 13 carbon or 15 nitrogen, it may be 16 oxygen, 16 oxygen is not active in the NMR because there are even numbers of even mass number and atomic number. So 16 oxygen cannot be used for NMR studies, but its isotopic form, that is 17 oxygen, which has odd number mass number, that oxygen can be used for NMR studies. Okay, then instead of 32 phosphorus, we can use 31 phosphorus again, because it has the odd mass number. Okay, then the question is where are these found? Okay, and the answer to this question is very simple, that in any natural sample, okay, in any naturally available sample, these particular types of isotopes are always there. Okay, they are always there. Of course, their abundance will be more or less, okay, but a tiny quantity, at least a small quantity of these isotopes are always present in any sample. Okay, so you take anything, for example, you have glucose, maybe you have purchased glucose from the medical shop, okay, and you have a sample of glucose. So even this naturally, whatever your sample is, glucose sample, it will naturally have a certain amount of isotopic hydrogen. Okay, it will have a certain amount of isotopic carbon. Okay, that is 13C. It will okay, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. So all these are definitely there to varying extent. Okay, so for example, 1 hydrogen is present at a natural abundance of 99.985% in any sample. Okay, and this one has half spin, half integral spin. 2 hydrogen has an abundance of 0.02%, so it is slightly higher compared to 1 hydrogen. Then 13 carbon, okay, because this is active in the NMR studies. So 13 carbon has an abundance of 1.1% in nature. Okay, so you take any natural compound, any molecule, and you will always find that 13 carbon is present at a concentration of roughly equal to 1.1%. Of course, maybe there may be a small variation in these percentages in different types of samples. Okay, but this is maybe an average value which is normally encountered. Okay, 15 nitrogen, for example, has a natural abundance of 0.37%. So you take any sample, and if you want to find out the structure of that particular sample, and you want to carry out NMR spectroscopy using 15 nitrogen atom as the base, then it is quite possible, because the natural abundance of 15 nitrogen is 0.37% in any sample. Is it clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then another interesting thing is these atoms which I am talking about, these isotopes of different atoms, okay, they are present in the molecule, and we are trying to find out how much of the radio frequency radiation is absorbed by these molecules. And then I said that depending upon the chemical structure or chemical environment of these atoms, they will absorb different frequency of the radiation. Okay, and which frequency of radiation they absorb, that will tell us some information about the structure of the molecule. Okay, in addition to that, there are some other motions in the neighboring nuclei. Okay, neighboring nuclei which are present in a sample molecule, they will also have the nuclear motions, okay, or spin motion. Okay, and because of that, they will also produce a magnetic field. Now, sometimes what happens is that magnetic field of the other atoms in the sample will interfere with the magnetic field of the atoms which you are trying to measure. Okay, so for example, it is 1H, that is proton NMR spectroscopy. Okay, then the other atoms which may be present in the sample, for example, there may be different carbons or oxygens or nitrogen, whatever. So these atoms, if they are also spinning, then they will also produce a magnetic field, and that magnetic field will have some interference with the magnetic field of our sample atom, okay, that is proton, for example, in this case. And therefore, these particular atoms will undergo what is called as relaxation. Okay, so when I say relaxation means what? They have absorbed the energy, radio frequency radiation, and therefore there will be a spin transition. Okay, so plus half, for example, will become minus half, and that spin transition actually should remain for some time. Okay, but because of the influence of the neighboring magnetic effect of the different neighboring atoms, okay, these particular atoms of our interest, they will undergo the reverse spin, okay, in a very short time. Okay, in other words, the energy state will come back to the normal, that is the ground level. Okay, so when they are flipping their spin, it means that they are getting excited. When they absorb radiation, they change their spin, that is they undergo spinning transition. Okay, that is the excited state for the nuclei. Okay, but because of the neighboring atoms which are there, which also have a magnetic field, and that magnetic field is interfering with our own nuclear magnets, because of that, the relaxation of our atoms will take place very fast. Okay, and normally what happens is studies are also carried out to see how this spin relaxation is taking place, how fast it is taking place. Okay, and that information is also used to find out what could be the tentative or what could be the putative structure of the particular compound or particular molecule. Okay, so that is called a spin lattice relaxation. Okay, then coming to this very important slide, that is in the analysis by using NMR spectroscopy, what information we are going to get is this information. First is, who are you? Okay, who are you means what atom you are. For example, it could be a proton, it could be a 13 carbon, or it could be 17 oxygen, it could be 15 nitrogen. Okay, so which atom, who are you? That is the first question which is answered. Then the other question is, where are you located in the molecule? That is, what is the chemical environment of that particular proton, for example. Okay, that is where it is placed in the molecule, what is the chemical environment. And then the third question is, how many of you are there? So depending upon the intensity of the light which is absorbed, that will tell us about intensity of the radio frequency waves that are absorbed. That will tell you about what is the concentration of those protons in the molecule. Okay, and then who and where are your neighbors? So it gives information about the neighbors. In other words, the chemical environment of that particular molecule is also determined based upon the chemical shift and also the spin lattice relaxation. So these are two important terms which are useful in the analysis. One is the spin lattice relaxation and the other is the chemical shift. So both these things are going to give you information about the atoms and the complete structure of the compound. Okay, and then this is another question, how are you related to the neighbors? Okay, so all this kind of information will then help you to find out what is the structure of the chemical compound. Right, this statement is also important. The last sentence I've written here, that is the amount of energy required for the spin transition to take place will depend upon the field strength, that is the magnetic field. It also depends upon the electronic configuration, that is the mass number and atomic number of that particular atoms. Okay, and then it will also depend upon the type of molecule, that is chemical structure of the molecule, and maybe also the intermolecular interactions. Okay, so everything is going to account for whatever information we get from the NMR spectroscopic analysis. Then we come to the instrumentation part. I hope the things are very clear to you. Is there anybody who has some question? Anybody who has not understood? Because if you understand the concepts well, then writing your examination will not be a difficult thing. Okay, you should be very confident of writing your paper. because each technique that we are going to learn here and the techniques that we have already seen so far, they are very, very distinct. They are different from each other, but at the same time, we have also seen that there is some common thread also. We have seen that every instrument has an input, every instrument has an output, and every instrument has a central processing part. And that central processing part will depend upon the type of the technique, the type of the sample itself. Okay. And accordingly, we have different input and we have a different type of output. So if you understand this basic relation, then I think the things will not be very difficult for you. Okay. So coming to the instrumentation part, what we have is a sample. The sample is placed in a magnetic field, and this magnetic field is generated between the poles of a permanent magnet, of very strong magnet, as I said earlier, or it could be also an electromagnet, which is very powerful enough. Okay. And then after having placed the sample, the energy which is required for the transition is produced by a radio frequency radiation, and that is generated by a generator. Okay. And having generated the energy, the energy is incident on the sample, and then the sample would absorb some particular wavelength, and whatever is absorbed, okay, or whatever is transmitted rather, that energy is measured by what is called as a radio frequency detector. So again, you will find that each and every technique of spectroscopy will have these common things. There is a source of radiation and there is a detector. Okay. And in the central part, that is some process is happening, and that process will depend upon the technique itself. Okay. Principle of the technique. And that is how it will be very easy for you to remember the different techniques of analysis. Okay. Now, like the UV visible spectrophotometer or the infrared spectrophotometer, we do not need an optical system. Now, this is very important. For example, we do not require any lenses. We do not require any mirror, like we have seen already in the case of UV visible spectrophotometry, nephelometry, turbidimetry, and infrared spectroscopy. And we are going to see a little later CD, ORD, and we are also going to see atomic absorption spectrophotometry, atomic emission spectrophotometry. So all these methods require lenses and mirrors. That is because they were optical devices, okay, optical based devices. But this particular device is not an optical based device. Okay, there is no light, there is no visible light or UV light or infrared light or anything like that. But what we are using is radio frequency waves. Okay, and therefore optical system is not required. Then what we require here is an antenna. Okay, an antenna and an aerial or an aerial. And this thing, the antenna or the aerial, will be used as both the transmitter as well as the receiver. Both the functions are carried out by the same device, that is the antenna. Okay, and then the magnetic field is kept constant, and the variation is introduced in the coils mounted on the pole faces of the magnet. That is to say, either we keep the magnetic field constant for the analysis and we vary the wavelength of the incoming radiation, or we keep the wavelength constant and we vary the magnetic field. So both the types of instruments are available. And then another important thing is the sample must be rotated in that particular place where the sample is kept in the instrument. Okay, the reason is that the magnetic field variation should not be there. In order to make a uniform magnetic field around the sample, we have to rotate the sample. This is another variation. For example, in the UV visible spectrophotometer, we have never seen that the sample is rotated, isn't it? However, in the case of NMR, the sample must be rotated so that the magnetic field is uniform in all sides of the sample. And maybe we don't have this in the syllabus. In the X-ray diffraction technique also, the sample is rotated. This is just for your information, but the reason for rotation there is different. There we have incident radiation which falls on the sample, and depending upon the various angles that are there in the sample, crystal, for example, the crystals are going to refract the rays, isn't it? And a pattern is generated. That pattern is used for analysis of the crystals. Okay, and therefore the sample must be rotated very slowly, and so that light will fall on different faces of the crystal, and then it will be reflected. and all that particular information is collected together to find out the structure of that particular molecule. But here the rotation is quite rapid. It is not as slow as the XRD technique. And the rotation here is in order to ensure a uniform magnetic field, okay, or to eliminate any variation in the magnetic field. Okay, and then another, there is a small thing which again you should know, and that is the frequency of radio signal which is absorbed by the test substance is measured in relation to a standard compound. So what we have is a standard compound, for example, tetramethylsilane or TMS. And there is another compound which is called as dimethyl silapentane 5-sulfonic acid. Okay, that is used for 13C NMR, and tetramethylsilane is used for proton NMR. Okay, the reason is that when we use this particular standard compounds, then they will give very sharp peaks at the right hand side of the NMR spectrum. Again, I have got 10 minutes for this meeting. I don't know why time flies away so fast. Okay, is the time running fast or what? I don't know, and why it is so. But the moment I start my lecture, immediately after some time I get the message that only 10 minutes are remaining. I think probably we are wasting about 5 to 7 minutes initially during the talk, because most of the students are yet to join, and so I have to keep waiting for everybody. And then that already 7 minutes are lost there. And then later, I don't know why the time goes off so quickly. Okay, then coming to the diagrammatic representation here, can you see the magnetic coil is kept here, a very strong magnet, and then there is a special sample holder in which the sample test tube is kept here. Okay, and then there is a radio frequency transmitter and a detector. So the radio frequency waves will be incident on the sample, and then whatever radiation is transmitted from the sample, that is detected by a detector. Okay, so what is absorbed will be known, okay, through the software, and we will get certain peaks here. Okay, I'm going to come back to that point about what is the spectrum, what does the spectrum looks like. That I will come a little later, but this is just a very simple diagram to tell you that what is the instrumental aspect, or what is the anatomy of the NMR spectroscope. Okay, so sample in a magnetic field, and it is irradiated with the radio frequency waves. There is a detector, okay, and there is a magnet controller in order to vary the magnetic field. So if it is a magnetic sweep kind of an equipment, then there is a magnet controller. Okay, and of course we can control the different wavelengths of the radio frequency also. So there is a scanning drive. So that drive will ensure that a particular wavelength is selected, and then the selected wavelength will fall on the sample. Okay, so when we scan the entire drive in the radio frequency region, then different wavelengths will fall on the sample, and some of the wavelength will be absorbed. That will depend upon the precisional frequency of, or rather the spinning frequency of that particular nucleus. Okay, and of course it will also depend upon the chemical shift, that is the chemical environment in which that particular atom is present. Is it okay? This is another representation. I will not go through that. If you have time, you can go through that, and whichever you feel is more easy, that you can study for your exam. Okay, I think I will skip this also. Not very important right now. This is an animation again to show how a particular resonance happens at a particular wavelength of the radio frequency. Just look at that. This is a water molecule actually, and at this particular place, there is a particular, you can say, magnetic field. Okay, so 2.3487 Tesla and 2.3488 Tesla. In this particular range, okay, somewhere the resonance is happening because it has absorbed a particular radio frequency waves, and because of that there is resonance. Okay, or that is there is absorbance of the radiation. Okay, then coming to another important slide, that is let me see if I have to read everything. Okay, I'll just skip this. Okay, just I'll go to the more diagrammatic representation so that you will be in a better position to understand the things. Okay, here I have shown some different types of molecules, and these are increasing in their complexity. So for example, this is one very simple molecule, and then a more complex benzene molecule, and then I have some other structures which are shown here. And this particular scale here or axis shows the resonance signal, that is which particular radiation is absorbed, starting from a lesser magnetic field to a higher magnetic field. Okay, and then you will find that as the complexity of the molecules increases, okay, there is more and more energy which is required, or more and more higher frequency wavelengths are absorbed by these molecules, and that represents the shielding effect. Okay, because of the shielding effect, or because of the chemical shift, you can say the complicated molecules or more complex molecules are going to require higher energy for the transition to take place. Which transition? Of course, the spin transitions in the proton. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Then I go to the next one. I think I have told you about this also, chemical shift, so I won't read that slide. I will skip that. So most of the things are repeated again and again in the slides because I have not still completed this particular presentation properly. Okay, so I don't want to repeat the same things again. This is not so important, and therefore I am skipping that. Okay, then there is another important thing that is called as the spin-spin coupling, okay, or splitting of the resonance lines. And that is because when the nuclei interact with each other, okay, the nuclei which are present in the sample compound, they can interact with each other. And when they interact with each other, then there is a splitting of the sharp resonance lines. And this splitting will give rise to what are called as multiplets, okay? That is duplets, triplets, quadruplets, and so on. So I will just show you this particular thing with the help of a diagram that will be more better to understand. So for example, I have one molecule here, okay, 1,2-dichloroethane. You can see the structure of that molecule, okay. 1 and 2, these are carbon atoms. One carbon has the chlorine atom. The other carbon also has a chlorine atom. So it is 1,2-dichloromethane. Okay, and then this particular molecule, if you look at carefully, then you will find that these are the hydrogens here. Okay, now these hydrogens are actually protons because we are going to carry out what is called as proton NMR spectroscopy. As I told you, that every compound will have a certain natural abundance of these isotopic forms. Okay, so just consider that all these 4 hydrogens here are in the isotopic form. That is, these are the protons. Okay, so now if you look at these hydrogens carefully, you will find that all of these 4 hydrogens are actually equivalent. Can you understand what I'm saying? These are all equivalent hydrogens. By equivalent, yes, I mean that the chemical structure around each hydrogen is exactly similar. Okay, for example, this hydrogen, it is attached to a carbon here and a chlorine here. Okay, this hydrogen is attached to a carbon here and there is a chlorine somewhere here. It is close to a chlorine. This one is again close to a chlorine and it is attached to the carbon. So that way, if you look at every proton, then they are all exactly similar to each other. And therefore, the energy which they are going to absorb, each hydrogen or each proton here is going to absorb the same kind of energy, exactly the same energy. There is no difference in all these 4 protons. And therefore, just remember what I'm saying, that all of these 4 protons are going to absorb a single wavelength of the radio frequency radiation. And therefore you get a single peak here. Can you see this line? This line is actually a peak. Okay, and they are going to all absorb a single peak, and that peak will be an intense peak because all the 4 atoms are contributing to that absorption. Is that clear, everybody? I think from the
Yes, sir.
structure, it is more easy for you to understand what I'm saying. Okay. Rather than just stating that particular sentence, and then it will be so difficult for you to understand what I'm saying. Okay. So from the diagram, it will be very clear. All the 4 protons are equivalent in this particular chemical structure, and therefore they are going to all absorb a single wavelength of the radio frequency radiation, and therefore we get a single peak in this particular spectroscopic image or in the spectrum. Okay. Then this is a TMS, trimethylsilane. I've already told you that this is a standard reference compound, and whatever is the position here, we always call it as a 0, 0 position. Okay, 0, 0 position. Whatever is the absorption of radiation, we don't bother about it, because see, different instruments are going to use different magnetic field. Okay, or they are going to use a different range of radio frequency radiation, and therefore if you are going to perform the analysis of a same compound on 2 different instruments, you are going to get variation in the position of the peak.